All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to RickCast on this beautiful second day of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Let me get that. There we go. Much better. And when I do that, like my camera goes out, it's terrible, but that's fine because you're here hanging out with me on this episode of RickCast. And I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. If the lighting's a little weird right now, it's simple. It's because I want to make sure that you can see the Sacred Heart behind me. And if I put my main light on, it glares it, and I don't want to do that. Thank you, G Money. Yeah, it's weird. You would think that the mic and everything would stay the same, but it doesn't. It doesn't. You have to do all these sound checks and everything, but it's all good. We're ready to roll. We got everything going here on Recast, and I have a heck of a show for you tonight. We got some warm up stories, some hot takes. Really, the hot takes are becoming, and I got to get a theme song for it. Rick explains his tweets because people just don't, they just don't get it. They just don't know. And that's just what it is. It's fine, and it gives me a chance to speak, and that's okay because this is indeed my show, and I am down for that, and I'm glad you guys are here as well. So let's see here. I got a couple of Rick explains his tweets, and then we are going to talk about the Boulder Incident because speech is so free here on X that I have to say the Boulder Incident. I can't really say what it is, or X will throttle me like it's I can't even make the joke because then they'll throttle me even more. So I can't make any of those jokes, which is kind of ridiculous. But we're going to talk about the Boulder Incident, and then we are going to discuss what are we going to talk about? SCOTUS denial of AR-15s. Now, this is a pretty big story because all the people in the gun community are they're crying, man. They're not very happy with this whole thing, and I get it. And I don't know what's going on with Rumble. Rumble is just not connecting lately. This is 2 shows in a row, so I'm sorry, guys, on Rumble. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. I don't have time to fix all of it and go back into it. So this will be the second show I have to upload. It didn't do it Friday either, which is weird, but it is what it is. So we're going to talk about the AR-15 denial by SCOTUS and what's going on there, how the 2A community doesn't like me. Like, I'm not really liked by many people. That's okay. I am my own person and I enjoy it. But the fact that the 2A community doesn't really like what I have to say is because they have this thing in their head that it's that we're going to get all of these decisions down because they got Bruin last time. They got the Bruin decision. And so they're like, oh, well, obviously we're going to get these things forever. We're going to get these things for forever. And why wouldn't we get a decision? Well, you're not going to get the decision simply because SCOTUS took 15 years between Heller and Bruin. And you guys think, and it's the 2A community, and they have no idea, and they don't believe in thinking locally and acting locally. So what they want to do is they want to run to SCOTUS like every other idiot and try to, oh, SCOTUS, mighty SCOTUS, please help us. And it's like, no, they're not going to help. There we go. I'm on Rumble now. So unfortunately, you people on Rumble see my ugly face. What's up? So we fixed it in real time. So we're going to talk about that. It's really me just scolding the 2A community for not getting more active in their own places. Nobody should be relying on SCOTUS. No conservative should be relying on SCOTUS. None of them, but they do because, we all have to, as Steve Cunningham would say, praise DC and do all these other kinds of things. And it's just so tiring. I can't believe SCOTUS did that to us. I can. And you people really are just absolutely stupid if you're going to try and, let me see here. You're going to try and get to this point where you can do all these things on your own. You got to be able to do these things on your own and not have to rely on SCOTUS. You got to think locally, act locally, and get after it. And they're not. Everybody's just running SCOTUS. Then we're going to talk about the Ukraine strikes on Russia, how people are foolishly, and I mean this with every ounce of charity in my cold, dark little heart, that you are all absolutely out of your stinking minds if you think this is a good thing. Like the guys on Loud with Crowder were celebrating this attack this morning, the attack that took place. They're like, oh, look how great Zelensky is. And I'm thinking to myself, clearly you are all morons when it comes to this specific topic. Now, Louder and Crowder, I watch it every day. I think they're hysterical. Josh Firestein is fantastic. Their takes on the Catholic Church are not great. I don't hold them to account for that, so it's okay. But the fact of the matter is, people, and they're not the only ones. There's a bunch of people celebrating this conflict, and if you have any desirability to exist outside of space and time, you should not want in any way, shape, or form this escalation, because you don't want Russia to actually step up and end this thing. People have been lulled into this false sense of security that that the people of Ukraine have somehow fought the Russians to a standstill. The Russians only wanted the stupid land bridge, and they're not trying to do anything to endanger. Yeah, maybe they take a shot at Kiev because it's wartime. You see how much you can get, but you don't want the Russians to actually use a tactical nuke. You guys are pushing them to a point that they're going to respond, and you're going to go, I can't believe they responded this way. Well, I can. And it's just so short-sighted. And you all taking the Russian bear way too lightly. And it's not going to work out for you guys in the end. It's not going to be a good thing. And then finally, we're going to talk about the box office holds for this week. Not bad. The box office holds weren't bad for Mark. We're going to have to disagree on this. I think you're fantastic. The Russians have been playing nice. Okay. The Russians have been playing nice. And if they really, really wanted to end this, they could end this in about 20 days. So I think the idea of considering Russia to be weak is not something I don't want to call anybody foolish, especially anybody that's good enough and awesome enough to watch this show. I don't want to insult you guys. We'll disagree on it. I think the tactic of pushing the Russians too far will have devastating consequences. I hope I'm wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, but I pray that I am wrong, that pushing the Russians too far is going to be an absolutely terrible idea. All right. And so we're going to be talking about that all and more. And like I said, your comments are what makes the show special. So please continue to comment. You guys are doing great. My bar rats on YouTube have shown up. And as always, and especially in June. June and July are such slow months when it comes to news and participation, because people they're outside. They're actually doing things. Instead of sitting inside all day like me in my little dungeon. But it's good to have you guys here hanging out with me on RickCast. Now, if you liked, I know Mark and some others didn't like the intro music. That intro music wasn't supposed to loop. It was only supposed to play for 3 minutes. It wasn't supposed to play for like a solid 7. So, and it's one of these things that it's going to play the rest of the month of June. But it's not going to loop like that. But if you liked the flag that you saw there, that I'm trying to make sure I share with people. If you liked that flag, check out this website. It's called tradflags.com. I'm going to give them the full screen. They're not a paid promoter of the show, but I'm using their image, their flag, because I think it's the best. I love it. It's my favorite picture of the Sacred Heart. There's so many beautiful ones, obviously, but this is tradflags.com. Tradflags.com. They got flags for every month. Especially, of course, this month they have the Sacred Heart, but they have all these other great ones. I'm going to give him a shout out. So hopefully he doesn't text me and say, like, take this down right now. Hopefully he'll let me use it for the rest of the month. But yes, go to tradflags.com. Not a promotion. They're not giving me money for this. I just want to say thank you for them letting me use that. And I want to throw this promotion their way. They got great, beautiful flags. Check them out, tradflags.com. Once again, thank you for not coming after me. Even if they did, they're good, so I don't think they would be too mean with me. All right, let's get to our first hot take. Now, I have to preface this by saying I do not dislike John Henry Weston. I've met John Henry Weston. He is a very nice man. I like what they do at LifeSite News. We used one of their stories the other day. So this is not me trying to throw shade at John Henry Weston. I just need to say that because everybody has this image in their head that I'm just, well, I am a curmudgeon. Let's be real. I a little bit of it is earned. I am going to say that, but I'm not constantly trying to make people trying to start fights with everybody. I'm not like Russell Crowe fighting around the world. That's not me. Although it is what it is. But this is just, I think this is just a slave to the algorithm type deal. And we're all a part of it. So in this segment of Rick Explains His Tweets, this tweet was fired off by John Henry Weston. Maybe he was being facetious, and if he is, good for him. He got one over on me pretty good. He takes this picture and he says, men need to learn how to dress modestly in public. Now, I don't think any of us would actually disagree that dressing well in public is something that we need to call for, and I think we should all want to do that. But at the same time, context is everything here. These men had just completed a cycling competition that ended in the Vatican City. You go right down and you edit the Vatican City, and the Pope comes out and he gives a blessing. So this was taken very quickly as they had just finished their race. They had just finished their cycling competition, and now they were invited to stand up there while the Pope did a blessing. And it's not like they had a chance to change. It's not like they were going to mass. This was a 5-second thing. And I wouldn't even bet like half of them probably aren't even Catholic. They're just kind of standing up there while the Pope does his thing. So while I would agree with John Henry's sentiment that yes, men do need to dress better in public, this is kind of taken out of context because these men literally just finished performing their athletic competition by cycling, which I don't think that's really a competition or athletic, but I mean, it's tough. I don't do it, but these guys are not, it's not like they all rolled out of bed and went to church like this, and then they just happened to meet the Pope. It was one of these things that this happens every year. It's just that it was highlighted a little bit more because it's brand new and he's just there and he's very affable and everybody's, he's very good with the pictures and so forth. So that's kind of what happened there. So I'm not trying to throw shade at John Henry. I just would like to just say, maybe let's not freak out every time something happens. Let's kind of take a breath and not, go absolutely nuts every time something happens at the Vatican, which we all kind of do. Second, Rick Explains His Tweets hot take is this one. So LifeSite News fired this off and says, let's get to 15,000 signatures. Let's ask the Pope to allow the Latin Mass to flourish again. And of course, because I am who I am, I decided to jump in here and say, maybe we should be practicing the cardinal virtue of prudence and not look like a bratty child stomping our feet, demanding what we want immediately. And I know this sounds bad. And I did actually try to explain a little more. I do understand that the Latin Mass is our birthright. I'm down with that. I love the Latin Mass, and I'd love to see the Latin Mass flourish everywhere in every parish. And I'd love to see the reverence and the love that comes with it again. I do. I do. However, I say this with everything, guy hasn't even been in office a month, and we're running to him hat in hand. Just looks bad. There are 1.4 billion, and Anthony had something to say about it, nothing terrible. Saying, if he asked properly, maybe our heartstrings will be pulled. I don't disagree, but at the same time, he wants to unify the church. I get that. But there are 1.4 billion Catholics in the world. Beartooth Catholic. I'm just going to put pin. That's Beartooth Catholic. If you like the Sacred Heart picture, that's Beartooth Catholic. He has gorgeous stuff, all kinds of gorgeous stuff. But my thing is that we Americans act like there are no other Catholics on the planet except those that attend the traditional Latin Mass. Now, there are some trads that actually believe that, but the fact of the matter is the Holy Father is responsible for 1.4 billion Catholics. And so the fact that we are going to run to him immediately and say, give us the Latin Mass back. Give it to us, please. We need it now. Okay. You realize that the Japanese went 1,000 years without any sacraments or any mass or anything, and they still were able to keep their faith. There are Catholics right now in China who are battling the authority, and yes, you can blame Pope Francis for making this worse, who are battling with the state-controlled quote-unquote religion. You've got our brothers in Africa who are fighting against Muslims who wake up one morning and their brother priests are now no longer there because they were dragged into the jungle at night. The Catholic Church is more than just the American traditional Latin Mass. And this is why some people don't like what I have to say. It's not all about you. And maybe you should have some perseverance. Maybe you should have some hope. Maybe you should pray. Maybe you should fast. Maybe you should suffer a little bit. And I have some very good friends that will disagree with me on this, and I still love them to death. And they, some reason, some way, shape, or form, still like me. But I think it's a bad look. And it makes, instead of being grateful, instead of accepting the will of God at this time, it's God's church. God knows what he's doing. The Holy Catholic Church is infallible. Unfortunately, the dudes running it are not. And to rush the issue immediately and throw it in his face and say, give us the Latin Mass back now. Now, I know that's not what they're saying, but what if it's interpreted that way? What if it's interpreted that way? So my thing is, right now, Indiana and some other places, especially Charlotte, they're struggling with bad bishops or bishops that are really going against what they believe. But at the same time, guys, there's strength in prudence, right? There's strength in prudence, and we all talk about the cardinal virtues, and we talk about charity, and we talk about suffering, and we talk about all these things. But as soon as it's presented to us, we drop to our knees and we do the platoon like, why? Like you guys can't even suffer a little bit. I'm just saying. Like I said, I have really good friends that do not agree with me in this regard, and that's okay. It's just how I view the world and how I view it. And I think we should be not so, I don't know, maybe the word is belligerent. that to think that we are the only ones that actually matter. Maybe I'm wrong on that. You can let me know in the comment section down below. All right, folks, this is RickCast. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell for all the fun things, all the fun buttons. Karate kick the like button. Leave me a comment wherever you are. You guys are doing great on YouTube. My bar rats are always bringing it. I got some people hanging out with on Rumble. Drop me a comment. Getter always brings the heat. You guys are doing great over there. Thank you. Good evening. All right, let's get to our first official story of the night. So there was an incident in Boulder, Colorado. So let's do some video first.
Preliminary information about an attack.
Go back to the front.
Today I'm here to give you very preliminary information about an attack that occurred here in downtown Boulder at about 1:26 p.m. today. At that time, Boulder dispatch received several calls to the county courthouse located at 1325 Pearl Street here in Boulder. The initial callers indicated that there was a man with a weapon and people were being set on fire. The initial response by our officers, we were on scene very quickly. When we arrived, we encountered multiple victims that were injured with injuries consistent with burns and other injuries. While our officers and paramedics and fire department personnel got those victims quickly to the hospital, our officers were pointed out, a suspect was pointed out to our officers on the scene. Our officers immediately encountered that suspect who was taken into custody without incident. That suspect, who I'm not able to ID at this time, was taken to the hospital with some minor injuries as well. And there's a lot more we're investigating right now before I'm able to release information on that person.
So what happened was a suspect, Solomon, charged with a federal hate crime. So yesterday on June 1st, 2025, Mohammed Saberi Solomon attacked a pro-Israel group marching at Boulder's Pearl Street Mall, injuring 8 people aged 52 to 88. Solomon, who entered the U.S. illegally in August 2022 and overstayed his visa, allegedly used a homemade flamethrower while yelling "Free Palestine" during the attack. One of the victims were Jewish demonstrators supporting Israel hostages, including a Holocaust survivor, and one victim remains in critical condition, with others severely injured. Authorities charge Solomon with multiple felonies, including hate crimes and first-degree murder, and the FBI is investigating the incident as an act of terrorism. The attack increased concern over anti-Semitic violence amid the Israel-Hamas conflict and prompted condemnation from U.S. and Israel officials. So, this from the Post-Millennial. The Boulder terror suspect planned the attack for over a year and had 14 Molotov cocktails. So, and this is the gentleman in question, which is kind of funny because when it happened, the first thing they said, it was a white guy. Yep, suspect identified as a white male. White male. And then they were like, oh, he's actually a white guy. Sorry. Oopsie boopsie. So, the Boulder, Colorado terror suspect, Egyptian illegal alien Mohammed Solomon, admitted to U.S. authorities that he wants to attack Zionists and said that he had been planning the attack for a year. According to Fox News' Billy Milligan, new details on Colorado terror attack suspect as feds charge him with federal hate crime. According to federal court filings obtained by Fox News, the Egyptian illegal alien Mohammed Solomon admitted in an interview that he wanted to get after all Zionist people and had been planning for the attack for a year, and that he would conduct the attack again if he would. So, of course, the idea first comes to, is this a hate crime? Is this domestic terrorism? Well, let's take a listen.
Earlier, the animus in his mind, the motive, is going to be very determinative here, whether we go hate crime or whether we go terrorism. And, in this...
Now, it has been officially done and classified as a hate crime.
Era of everybody having smartphones, there's already a lot of video bouncing around on social media. He's yelling various things. It may not seem it was that important at the time to the people that were filming it. They just knew something was going on. He was holding, it looks like, according to the videos, we've seen a couple of bottles. I guess those were the Molotovs, maybe before the incident, or maybe he had more. I don't know. I want to be clear. But believe it or not, people may not realize this, but they are sitting on potentially very important evidence. Because if he says something that goes specifically to the idea that this is ideological, that he's trying to influence people's opinions, that he's trying to change the actions of the government, it starts to segue into the terrorism world. And then you're going to have to say to yourself, do we have, for a federal charge, enough of action overseas that we're going to charge him with terrorism, or we're going to have to go a different route?
So, as some of you are correctly pointing out, he now gets to stay, and this is a direct result of the Biden regime allowing unfettered, unchecked immigration. And so this is just another example in my mind to what we here, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and the bar rats here at RickCast, what we've been talking about for the last couple months, that the violence in this union is only going to increase as it gets spicier in the summer. And that's a pretty sad thing to think about, considering that we aren't, I mean, the Ember Days for summer are next week. Now, if you're a Catholic, you'll know what I'm talking about. Well, if you're a rad trad, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, the official start of summer, at least in the Catholic world, will start next week with the Ember Days. So we're not even in summer yet, and we're getting this increase almost weekly in some kind of violent exchange. And this is the second one. I know last week we talked about the incident in Washington, D.C., where the gentleman attacked the two Israelis outside of a Jewish museum in D.C., and those people were brutally unalived. So this is I feel it looks like the pattern is starting to emerge, that Israel-Palestine conflict may be the backdrop for most violence, most political violence that we will experience this summer. It's the largest issue. It's the issue that connects with the largest amount of people within the liberal or the progressive base, more than Carmelo Anthony or Tesla or any of these other things. That's the one that keeps reasserting itself. So it's going to be very interesting how it goes when the entire summer season is official. I mean, we're getting close to it because schools are out. So we have that. We give them another week or two to kind of settle in. And then we'll see if there are large scale protests. We'll see if there is large scale violence going on there. And it's going to be interesting to see if Trump addresses that. So we're going to have to see how he does this. He condemned, obviously, nobody here in these United States should be fearful, regardless of your race, religion, creed, or sex. Also, this is one of those things where Colorado is one of those states that does everything it can to prevent you from keeping and bearing arms. There are a lot of restrictions on that. When you have a lot of restrictions and you rely on the police and you rely on others to defend yourself, despite the fact they have no obligation to defend you, these things are more likely to happen. So we'll see how that goes as we actually officially get into these summer months. I mean, I really hope that it's not going to be as nasty as it could be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is RickCast. Like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, all the fun things to continue this show going forward. Now, I'm going to be doing something real quick. This is for a friend of mine, and I wanted to give it a second for people to actually show up in here. So I have a buddy of mine, Dean Oaks, who is probably one of the strongest dudes I know. And he is going through a lot of, he's been dealt a pretty rough hand in this life, and he's got a great attitude going about it. But right now, in addition to it, and I'm going to put his GoFundMe in the chats, so if you want to support him, that would be great. Right now, he's he's getting ready for yet more treatment for his injuries, the things that he is going through. And if you could support him in any way, shape, or form, that would be great. Check out his link in the description. You can find out about what he's going through. And please, if you can, give give whatever you can. I'm not, doesn't have to be, we're not asking for a lot here. Whatever you can do to help Dean in his fundraising efforts to, to push through a pretty bad hand that he's been dealt with. So links in the chats, check it out. And if you can help, that would be a huge, huge blessing. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our next story of the day. Let's see. So this happened the other day, and it is this happened over the weekend, and it just absolutely stuns me that people are celebrating this. And that is Ukraine strikes Russian air bases, destroying 40 aircraft. Russia responds with record drone and missile attacks. We could talk about this, or I could do fun animations. And I know we like fun animations, so we're going to do that instead.
Engineers designed a clever drone launching system disguised as ordinary wooden cabins mounted on the backs of cargo trucks. These mobile containers looked like simple rural sheds, but inside they held reinforced structures, hidden launch platforms, battery charging stations, and remote-controlled roof mechanisms. The design allowed for drones to be launched either vertically or at an angle, depending on their type, while built-in signal shielding avoid early detection by Russian surveillance. Once these mobile silos were ready, Ukrainian intelligence operatives, possibly with help from local sympathizers, moved them deep into Russian territory. The trucks were quietly driven to pre-selected sites near key airbases, parked in places like forests, farms, or industrial areas where they blended into the landscape. They remained dormant for days or even weeks, with drones preloaded, charged, and waiting for the command to strike. When the time came, encrypted activation signals were sent remotely. The roofs of the containers slid open and the drones lifted off, some vertically, others using ramps or compressed air launch systems for a silent. Because the launch sites were positioned just a few kilometers or 2 miles from their targets, the drones were able to reach their objectives quickly, leaving little time for Russian defenses to react. Operators guided them in real time using live video feeds, steering the drones with precision toward parked aircraft, fuel depots, and radar installations.
Thank you. Thank you, G-Money. You're right, Cesare. It probably wasn't 40. It was probably 9, but we're dealing with propaganda on both sides, and we're dealing with everybody trying to muted. Trying to one up and be sassy, for lack of a better term. Now, agree or disagree, but I agree with what this gentleman said on X earlier today. For decades, treaties kept nukes in check. Bombers had to be out in the open, silos sealed, so nobody could pull off a surprise strike. This was the thin line stopping World War III. Zelensky has shattered this all in one move. Threw out the rules, erased decades of stability, and threw us straight back into a Cold War chaos. Anyone who helped make this happen isn't just reckless, they're a danger to the entire planet. Anybody who's actually celebrating this is completely out of their minds. Now, he may be a bit hyperbolic on some of these things, but he's not completely wrong. And the fact of the matter is, this is the thing that you people, and when I say you people, I mean you people who are celebrating this. You're not going to be celebrating if Putin feels like he's got to respond with a tactical nuke. And then guess what? Ukraine doesn't exist anymore. It's all fun and games until somebody drops a tactical nuke right on this and ends this whole thing. And people, and I know Mark has been saying some pretty good things. I'm not going to, I think what Mark has to say is very valuable. But what about the thousands of people and so out? I'm telling you, the Russians have been playing as nicely as possible because they're hoping that you'll just give them the stupid land bridge and everybody can go back to where they were beforehand. That's what they want. They've never really indicated that they were intending to take over Poland and all these other things. And so the fact of the matter is, when this kind of thing happens, and we're seeing the response from it. And yes, it is PR. But the problem is, that's all this war seems to be, is public relations. And there's supposed to be a sit down tomorrow for for negotiations. And so yeah, you're completely right, Mark, but when are we getting to the point that you're going to force him to do so? He's never been in a place, at least with my very limited analysis of it, that he's been forced to drop a bomb. Forced to do it. If public relations gets that bad and he's getting tired of this, he has the ability to pretty much end it. Ukraine does not. And so when you have the Louder with Crowder guys, who I respect a lot, celebrating this kind of thing, it just smacks in the face of this. You should not be cheering on this type of death. Oh, was it today? Okay. Then my information was no good. So it was today. So thank you, Seth. This is why the bar rats are that important in this show, because they can help correct me in real time. I was told that the negotiations were tomorrow, or I read that the negotiations were tomorrow, maybe because that article was yesterday and it would have been right. But the negotiations were today, so it was done before going into that. And I really hope cooler heads can prevail. Crotchety, can you expand on this Cold War thinking? What do you mean by that? I'd like to have you expand upon that so you can get that into the conversation. Anyway, the Ukraine Security Service launched this coordinated drone attack on 4 Russian airfields. The operation, codenamed Spiderweb, followed more than 18 months of planning. The strike severely damaged or destroyed 40. Of course, my guy on the ground, I'll trust, is Cesare. He says it's 9, even though they have about 120 of them. Zelensky called the attack a brilliant operation that inflicted justified losses of up to $7 billion and was directed from an office near a Russian FBS facility. And of course, everybody thinking that it is what it is. They are an enemy. We are wrecking their country. Yeah, like I said, you're not entirely wrong, Mark. You're not entirely wrong. I wouldn't be celebrating as much as it is. Mark, like I said, what you have to say is completely valid. The points you're making are completely valid. I just don't want to push it to a point, especially for somebody like Zelensky and the Ukraine. So it's just, I get that this is they're not supposedly an ally or any of these other kinds of things, but cheering for unwanted death and destruction is never a good thing, even though that's mostly the norm here in world history. It just gives me an uneasy feeling because I feel like it's pushing things too quickly, and I'm going to sound like the aircraft carrier captain in Hunt for Red October. This thing's getting out of hand. It's getting out of hand, and we'll be lucky to live to make it through it. And so that's my whole thing with that. Well, we'll see. We'll see as this goes forward here on RickCast. Do me a favor, hit that like, subscribe, share button if you like what we're doing here on the program. Let's move on to our next. And that's why, I mean, you're like, Rick, you don't really know what you're talking about, blah, blah. Guys, this is just a forum. I'm here because I want to talk about this stuff, but I really like having Mark and Cesare and G Money and Dean all in the chat, helping make this, Lou, helping the conversation be that much better because they bring so much to the table as far as opinions and things to kind of bounce off of. So, all right, let's get to our next story update. Oh, look at this. SCOTUS. Supreme Court denies challenges to state laws banning assault-style weapons in high-capacity magazines. And Gun Twitter, whatever you want to call it, shrilled today. They were just heartbroken that SCOTUS had left them. And my simple response to today's ruling is no kidding. When you actually look at how SCOTUS looks at 2A case law, they don't do it a lot. And because we got the Bruin decision and because we got a Cargill decision, we expect that SCOTUS is going to step in and is going to save us and our gun rights in every occasion. You're gonna be disappointed. And I know Gun Twitter doesn't want to hear this. And I know Gun Twitter does not like the fact that I say this. Well, we got a 6-3 majority. You got like a 5-4 majority because let's just be real. Amy Coney Barrett is a liberal at this point. And John Roberts is essentially, well, yeah, you got a 5-4 because Amy Coney Barrett is 100% a liberal. You can't count on her. She's not a conservative. And then you got John Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh, who are squishies. So you really don't have a majority on the court anymore. So this fact that we want to run to the court every time something bad happens is just going to result in things like this. So the Supreme Court denied to hear 2 gun cases involving a Maryland law banning assault-style weapons and a Rhode Island, way to go, Rhode Island, and a Rhode Island law restricting high-capacity magazines. Judge Clarence Thomas, along with Justice Samuel Alito and Neil Gorsuch, dissented, arguing the Maryland law may not align with a 2022 ruling. I believe the 2022 ruling is the Bruin versus the New York State and Rifle and Pistol Association. And then the Maryland law bans what the state calls assault weapons that are similar to military arms like the M16 and the AR-15. The AR-15 is not a military weapon, but that's not here there. Litigation regarding similar bans across the country continues, suggesting the issue may return to the Supreme Court. And this is just a fault and a fool's errand by conservatives. And it's sad that they have to do this, or they feel that they have a choice. The only way to ensure that your gun rights will stay is if you change the law at the state level. And I know when I say that, everybody goes, Rick, well, Maryland doesn't let you have guns. Guys, I'm from Rhode Island. They won't let you have anything. They won't let you have anything. But yet, running to SCOTUS is not going to change things. Because, folks, even Bruin and Heller are precedent. What does that mean? That means something very simple. That means, be quiet. That means that if a future court decides to, they can overturn Heller, they can overturn Bruin, they can overturn all of it, guys. And there's nothing you can do about it because you didn't reinforce it at the federal level. You didn't do it. And so guess what? You are relying on SCOTUS, who has shown you in this term, they're really not on your side anymore, my man. Corbin, my man, they're not with you. They're not with you in these things. And you're going to try and say, well, I can't believe SCOTUS left us. SCOTUS took 15 years between Heller and Bruin to even hear a 2A case. It may be another 15 years if they hear another case. And you better hope that it's not a liberal majority when that starts. Y'all begging for something that you don't want to have to actually deal with later on. I'm telling you, it's not a great thing. It's not a great idea. And yet you continue to do this. you continue to run to SCOTUS. Now, I know Rhode Island has a God-given right to keep and bear arms in its state constitution. I don't know if Maryland does or doesn't off the top of my head, but the only way to do this, if you really want your God-given right to keep and bear arms to be enshrined in the Constitution or to be protected, you need to do it on the state level. That's where you need to do it. You can't keep running to SCOTUS. And I get it. Like Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America, NRA, they have to push it for a national or else they don't have a job. I understand. I don't even fault them. I think they do good work for the current thing that they're in. But the fact of the matter is this. When you run to SCOTUS, this is more likely than not going to be the outcome. You got lucky with Bruin. You got lucky with Cargill. Those are what I like to call the exception. Those are not the rule. And you guys are starting to treat it like the rule. And all you're doing is setting yourself up for future disappointment. And the more you go to the federal government, the more you go to Washington, D.C., begging for crumbs, the more likely and the outcome will be that we will lose our God-given right to keep and bear arms because we're foolish enough not to try to do this at the local level. Well, Rick, don't just strike it down. Then you do it again and you do it again because the left doesn't give up. If you strike down something, just take same-sex marriage. Take same-sex marriage. If the left had given up on same-sex marriage after the first time it was voted down in California, then it would have never happened. They got it by doing 10 plus years of work. Conservatives don't want to do the work. We just want to run to SCOTUS or elect Trump or a conservative and then say, you do it for me. That's not how this works. If you really want to keep your gun rights, you got to get in the fight and actually hold your politicians accountable and make sure that you hold them accountable at the ballot box so you don't get to the cartridge box. That's how this works. It doesn't work the other way around. You can't hope, vote and cope. What is it? Vote, hope, and cope your way out of this. When I say voting for Trump and hoping that, he is omnipotent enough to acknowledge your right to keep and bear arms. That's not the way this works, homie. And it's not going to be a great outcome for you. And this is another reason why. Trump's got 3 judges on the court. And yet they still didn't protect your God-given right to keep and bear arms. So what are you going to do then? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our last story of the day. Let's do a little entertainment news here. From boxofficereport.com, Lilo and Stitch KOs Karate Kid legends. So the big thing we're looking at is the holds for Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible. Obviously, the Karate Kid 75 has been launched. We don't really care because it's the first weekend, and it is what it is. We're really trying to see how is Lilo and Stitch holding, how is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning holding, because we want to see if either one of those will make any kind of decent box office. It looks like Lilo and Stitch will get close to $1 billion or over, probably 1.2, 1.4 billion. Mission Impossible, they're bragging that it's around 350 million. It's got to make $600 million more to get there. But anyway, so the 3-day weekend gross for Lilo and Stitch was $149. Let's see. Lilo and Stitch. They both dropped 57%. Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning both dropped 57%. That's not the dreaded 60. The dreaded 60 is a 60% drop. If that's a 60% drop, then that means that the audience is not responding well to the film and that it's not going to have that much long of a life. Now, 57 is not great. It is not a great look, and it could definitely spell trouble. But at the same time, like Lilo and Stitch, you make $63 million on top of that. then you're going to be all right, because that's 610 million global at this point. So you're only $400 million away from getting to $1 billion. So that movie, Lilo and Stitch, is going to easily clear $1 billion. It's going to absolutely clear it. Now, Karate Kid Legends, nobody cares because it's the first weekend. We'll see how it holds. Let's see. Cinema score on Karate Kid Legends. Let's see what it is. A-, which is the same thing that Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch had. Lilo and Stitch had an A, Mission Impossible had an A-. So it might have a decent to okay hold. So we'll see how that does as far as the Karate Kid with its actual going on. Now, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, 27 million, 57% drop. The big thing for Mission Impossible is that it came out with 25 million in China. Now, it's only going to get about 3% of that box office, but numbers-wise, that's a huge deal for Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, because they can say, listen, 25 million in China, 22 million in the UK. Those are pretty decent numbers. And if it can continue, now, if it can do a second weekend of around 20 million in China, it might get to the 600, maybe 650 mark. Now, of course, $400 million, another 100 million for marketing. That's 500 million. The total box office haul for whatever that movie's going to make, they're going to take about half of that. So even if it makes 650, it's going to come back with 325 to Paramount, which means it's going to be a loss. And that's going to be pretty sad, because, you know, as much, and I got to talk to the people that are lying. Anybody who's lying to people saying that Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is a good movie, you got to stop. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what kind of clout you're chasing. I don't know what kind of attention you're seeking. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is not a good movie. It is an okay movie. It got a weak pass from me. My standard is it's pass fail. You know, Harvard does it. I can do it. It got a weak pass from me. It was enjoyable to see in theaters for the stunts, for the two set pieces. It is not a good film by any way, shape, or form. The first hour is a slog exposition dump. And then there's really not a great plot, because it's trying to balance between the ending of the Mission Impossible franchise and a terrible AI villain. So I'm begging whoever said Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is a good movie is not a good movie. Unless you really want to support Tom Cruise, or you really want to see these stunts that are done. I'm not going to lie. The submarine and the airplane set pieces are two of the best set pieces I've ever seen in a film, in a theater. They are. And the dedication that director Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise and the entire set, the entire crew put together is commendable. But even with all of that, I cannot recommend it outside of if you really like going to the movies, go see it. You know, if you can maybe go an hour late, because the film is not very good for the first hour. But people have to stop saying that it's a good film. It's not. It's okay at best. And this really holds true for films' finality, whether it's a TV show or the last movie in a franchise. They're never good because they have such expectations put on them. And this is yet another example of it. So I'm begging whoever is doing it, please stop saying they're good film, that it's a good film. It's okay. It's okay, but nothing more than that. All right, folks, that's it for this episode of RickCast. Thanks for hanging out with me. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, do all the fun things to help the show grow. Shout out to our people on Kick tonight. We started streaming on Kick, so we see you guys over there. Thank you for participating, dropping your comments as well. So everybody on Getter, thanks for hanging out with us. Everybody on YouTube, the Bar Rats, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Everybody on Rumble, thank you for hanging out with us. Twitch, everywhere else. X tonight, X was nice enough to show the show out, so we got some decent views there. Thank you for hanging out with us, ladies and gentlemen. This is RickCast. I will talk to you all tomorrow night. God bless. And until that day comes, free Dexter Taylor. And happy heart of the sacred month of Jesus.